And Tupac's song changes. He has some lines where he talks about changing his life and he's trying to do something better, but he still has to worry about somebody, from way back in the day that he offended or did something to, trying to get him, all these years later. Because that's the reality of that's what happens. That's one of the consequences of street life. It's, it's just, that's how people are. So I find it very annoying when people look at what happened to Nipsey Hustle and they don't even consider that. It's automatically some kind of conspiracy theory. Is it possible that he was killed for some kind of, conspiracy or whatever? It's obviously possible, but it's also very possible that someone who didn't like him for something he did a long time ago or even recently wanted to kill him, And it's, anytime somebody dies, it's sad, and it sucks because I hear some people saying, oh, he's just a thug and all of this stuff. Well, look, truth be told, every person has good and bad in them. Even if you look at the Bible, you look at David. David was called by the Bible, the biblical writers, as a man after God's own heart. But yet he killed the man, slept with the man's wife, or basically, I would say he raped her just from him being in a position of authority. And then he killed the woman's husband to cover it up. He was a terrible dad. David in the Bible, King David was a horrible dad. He ruined his whole family. Like, his sins ruined his whole family. There's a lot you could say about him. But yet, you read the Psalms, and his words are in the Bible. His words are considered, as part of the Word of God. Some of his words, not all of them, obviously. It's unfair to judge people just by the bad they've done. It's unfair to judge people just by the good they've done. You can't do that. Even if a guy was bad and he turned good, he's still, if you want to judge his life or his work, you have to look at both. If he was good and turned bad, it's still the same thing. Like, people aren't defined by just one aspect of their life that you hate or that you love so much that you just want to highlight that. Nipsey Hussle or anybody else, me, you, anyone else, we're not just defined by one thing. I'm not just defined by someone who's, yells at my kids too much, or, oh, he's a great worker. No, I'm a lot of different things. And you can praise the good things and you can acknowledge the bad things that you're going to find in my life as well. Why can't we do that with people? Why do we have to always make them out to be a hero or a complete villain? They don't have to be that. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I know a whole lot about the guy. I know who he is. And I know, a little bit about his story of turning his life around, or, people say he turns his life around and giving back and that sort of thing. I don't know a whole lot about him. I'm not going to pretend like I do. I'm not commenting on his whole life and what happened to him and the reason why it happened. I'm not trying to say I understand all this because I wasn't there. All I want to say is, why does it take for someone to die for their good works to be spread? Now I'm not saying you have to talk about the man all the time and act like you're his biggest fan or anything like that. But what I'm saying is that it's unfortunate that when a black celebrity or black person gets caught up, whether they've done something, whether they're accused of done something, or whether they die, then all of a sudden people want to talk about the great stuff that person was doing. And my whole point is, while they were alive doing those great things, instead of promoting victimhood and tragedy and we still ain't free and this is just like slave times, why don't you spend your time and your energy promoting, hey, look at what Nipsey Hussle was doing. Hey, if he can turn his life around, others can turn their life around. Just so many different things that you can talk about that they're doing. Why does it have to be that when he died, you want to speak out? Why isn't that all this time, for however amount of years or events or programs he started or whatever, why aren't those on your lips? They're not on your lips then. I hear just people talking about victimhood. Why not promote those who are actually doing something and talk about those things and promote those things that other people can be encouraged by or even get involved with? See, this is the problem I have with the black community. And I know that's a kind of not a good term or whatever. This is why I always say the biggest problem the black community has is not the white man and it's not the government. The biggest problem that the black community has is it's a mentality that you're so busy. You hear so much about victimhood and bad things that happen to people that people don't spend enough time talking about the encouraging things that black people are doing or trying to do or whatever until they die. And then it's like, oh, this person, the reason why he was killed is because he was doing this great thing or that great thing. Well, like take Bill Cosby. People say, oh, he was trying to buy NBC and all of this. Well, when he was during that time, he was trying to buy NBC, which I guess you're assuming that's automatically a good thing. During that time, were you talking about it saying, hey, this black man was, I'm taking a perspective of the whole pro-black thing. During that time, were you like, hey, this black man is trying to do something awesome. Let's support him in some kind of way or whatever. And let's, this is a good thing for us to share. Now, one thing I would say is that Dr. Umar Johnson in his school, which, regardless of how you feel about it, good or bad or indifferent, that is one thing that people talked about. And that's what you ought to do. You ought to talk about those things that you believe to be positive and that you believe to, be beneficial. You can't always just talk about victimhood and slavery all the time. And 90% of the time when I hear about issues regarding the black community, it's always victimhood. Black men don't do this for black women. Black women don't do this for black men. And why are black men sleeping with white women? Like, those are the only things that I hear when I join conscious groups online, or when I just generally hear people talk about black stuff. That's all I hear is issues and problems. And maybe I'm part of the problem too. Maybe that's something I can look at for myself. Like, I need to talk more about encouraging things, empowering things, talking about what Nipsey Hustle was doing. That can inspire other people who maybe have the same background as him. It can even open up the eyes of some people maybe that just view, like, oh, once a thug, always a thug or whatever. Like, my favorite rapper is he's a former Blood. And he's a Christian rapper. He is so rough around the edges that a lot of religious people don't like him. But what he does is he gives hope to those people that's in that lifestyle that he came from. Like Nipsey Hustle. That's the whole point that I hear a lot of people saying, is that he gave people hope, not only in him giving back, but just seeing a change, an awakening or whatever. We can speak more, and I hate that term, but we can speak more power and more encouragement and more fight or whatever into our communities by sharing the good, not waiting till the person doing the good dies or is arrested in some scheme or his own sins or whatever. That's the point of the post I made on Facebook, where I said before today, I never heard anyone, I haven't heard any one of y'all ever talk about Nipsey Hustle. But now that he's died, you talk about it, and then you talk about it in conjunction mainly just with the conspiracy theory thing. Like, oh, Nipsey Hustle this sucks. They killed him because he was doing this. Like, it's like, okay, wasn't he important enough to share his good news and stuff when he was alive? And I see a mentality that I want to challenge. People just see in action, or they see what happened and they want to get upset. And they want to jump to conclusions. Here's the thing. Each person that's part of a movement should be just part of the movement. If your movement dies with one person, or if it's like, oh, he was the one, or he was the guy that was doing something or whatever, like, if that is the case, then that tells you right there that the general population has a mental problem. Because you think about terrorists, they have sleeper cells, and it's hard. You can't really snuff them out, because when you kill one leader, another one rises in its place. That's the kind of mentality that black people should have. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be disappointed that a black man was killed. assassinated, what it looks like. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be disappointed because he was doing great things, and now a person who was doing great things is being taken from this world. I'm not saying that that's wrong. That's just very discouraging. But what I'm saying is, the movement should not be dependent upon a select few. The improvement of our community cannot be dependent on celebrities, regardless of how powerful and impactful they are. The improvement of the black community cannot be dependent on just money, and it can't be dependent on celebrities using celebrity status. It takes, if you want the black community to do better in the areas that it's suffering in, it takes, a lot of the problems we have can be fixed ourselves. Now, I'm not saying nothing I haven't said before. I feel like I'm rambling at this point. But it just, I don't know. It's tragic to see somebody die and, to be killed like that. That sucks. But if you saw some good in what he was doing, when his light is snuffed out, why don't you create the same thing? Why don't you create the same positivity or environment or whatever that you felt like he was creating for young people? Do the same thing. What he was doing, the injustice would be if what he was doing died with him, and it ought not be. If you know what he was doing and it was working, if you have the same background and you can start the same, and I'm gonna use the word ministry, you can start the same ministry where you are. The same programs that he had or whatever that you felt like were beneficial, why not try to start them too? Be inspired by his life, mourn his death, but be inspired by his life and take the good things from it that you can apply and encourage others to apply. It's just, I don't know. So, just to say it one more time, I just don't understand how it's, when a person's alive, like, of all the good things that could be shared in the black community, all I hear is just victimhood and oppression. But then when a certain person dies, you hear, oh, this person was doing something good. This person was doing something great. Why is it that when they die, you hear it, but when they're here doing it, you should be screaming it from the rooftops? You should be sharing it with everybody, instead of just thinking about being a victim all the time. Those things are encouraging. Those things are empowering. Thinking like a victim, thinking about what happened to your ancestors, that's not empowering. That's just going to make you hateful, and it's just going to make you feel like a victim. And the proof is in the pudding, because when you see people talk about black power, they don't talk about Nipsey Hustle. They talk about Colin Kaepernick, which was imagery. And I'm not saying this to bash him. I'm saying what he did was symbolic. So people put more emphasis on, you hear more about Colin Kaepernick kneeling and Beyonce, wearing Black Panther stuff than you do about Nipsey Hustle and him actually being on the ground, actually in the community, in the hood, doing stuff. Now, obviously, Beyonce is, they're celebrities, so whatever they do is going to be talked about. But what I'm saying is, you see the imagery talked about more than the actual work. The actual work actually changed things. The imagery changes nothing. So let's focus on, if you want to talk about things, let's focus more on things and people that are actually doing positive things that we can emulate, and not just talk about the victim status all the time.